Okay, today is December 2nd, 2021, and today may be the day that I make the most politically incorrect video I can make, I think. It's going to be, well, it will enrage the B of the LGBT community. I believe what I'm going to say is going to make some feminists upset, and I know what I'm going to say is going to be transphobic, for sure. So here we go. So this is stuff that, again, I'm not an expert on this stuff, and when I make these videos about this subject, I am pushing myself to my own boundaries and possibly beyond my boundaries. And I'm going to do my best to only say things that I know are true, that are confirmed by at least some level of science, scientific consensus, you might be able to say. But there's always debate, always debate. I'm not saying that what I'm about to say is 100% true, and part of the reason I'm making this is to look for feedback to figure out where I'm wrong. So if you find a spot where I'm wrong, I'd love to know where. Okay, so I have to start this with evolution. I believe the story of evolution. Human beings have come from the animal kingdom. And I know that there's people out there who they will say they know that. They'll say, yes, I believe in evolution, but I don't think they really do. I think most people, even people who are atheists, and tell themselves and tell other people that they understand evolution, I don't think they really do. So, because I've run into this a lot of times. So anyway, a lot of what I'm about to say is based off of an evolutionary understanding of human beings. So, look up a picture of a chimpanzee hand if you haven't done this before. This is an exercise that everybody should do. I mean, I do it frequently. Look up a close-up picture of a chimpanzee hand, the palm of a chimpanzee hand, and just stare at it for a couple seconds. Stare at it for as long as you can. And if it doesn't freak you out in some way, then I don't know. It freaks me out every time I do it. When you look at that hand, you're like, oh, that, and then look at your own hand and just compare the two. It's freaky. It's freaky. So, here's where I'm going to start with this. I've been wondering where I'm going to start with this morning. So, you have a mother. Everybody listening had a mother. You also had a father, but the odds of you having interactions with your father are smaller than the odds of you having interactions with your mother. I mean, you had at minimum one interaction with your mom at the moment of birth. You could have theoretically never met your father, so probably many people never meet their father. But everybody had at minimum one interaction with their mother, And I'm going to go ahead and say that most people have had more than one interaction. You probably have a very close relationship with your mother early on in your life. So, here's the thing, is that relationship between a mother and a child has been happening. Think about how many times that has happened. The relationship between mother and child. So, it happened to you. It happened to your parents. And to their parents, like going back in your lineage, how many times has there been a relationship between a mother and a child? And if you think about that lineage, how far back does that go? It goes back pretty damn far. It goes back beyond human beings, right? It goes back beyond mammals. Well, no, it doesn't go back beyond mammals. It probably, somewhere in the mammalian line, there started to be a relationship between mother and child, right? Because some creatures just lay eggs, right? And then, well, you think about something like birds. Birds are always interesting to think about because they have convergently evolved something that looks like the same kind of brain that we have, but they got it through a different route, a different evolutionary route, which is amazing. But you think about mother and child. I'm focused on this because I'm focused on instincts. So there's this notion people have that's completely wrong. And I think it's really hard not to have this notion. It's sort of built into you, right? We all believe like we're these rational beings, that we're blank slates, right? There's this concept that humans are blank slates, and it's completely wrong. It's completely wrong. Humans are not blank slates. Just not. There's what Brett Weinstein says, and Heather Heying, I think, this is the way that they phrase it this way, and I completely agree with them. Humans are not blank slates, but they are the blankest slates in the animal kingdom. And to me, that makes perfect sense. That's the best way to describe it. But the point is we have built-in instincts, and it's hard to tell where the instincts. The question of where do the instincts start and where does the blank slate begin? You know what I mean? Where do the instincts start, end, and where does the learned behavior begin? And this is a very difficult question to think about. It's a difficult question to study. At what point, the second a child is born, it's already learning and already changing, right? And so it's hard to tell what changes were, what are you born with and what is put on you, basically. And arguably, you're already learning things inside the womb. So, like, your brain's already developing the second you have a brain, really. So, anyway, mother and child, think about that relationship. How much of that relationship is instinctual and how much of it is learned? Like, when a mother has a child, how much of the behavior towards that child is something that was taught to that mother through social whatever, and how much of that is just stuff that just kind of turns on automatically, that just activates? And the same thing goes for baby. When a baby is first living in the world, how much of the behavior towards the mother is instinctual and how much of it is societal, right? And so I think you can easily make an argument that there's a heavy instinctual. A lot of the behaviors are very instinctual there, right? They're built into you. They're not socialized into you, right? And so why is this? Like, why? I mean, I think some of this, what I just said, is kind of inarguable. We all know that there are mother instincts, right? Like, we've all seen it. We've all had mothers, and we've all watched mothers, and people talk about this all the time. There are mother instincts. And there are clearly baby instincts towards mother, right? Babies react to their mothers differently than they react to other humans. And that's not taught. And so the reason for this, if you think about it, going back in your own lineage, how many mothers have there been in your own lineage that are interacting with children? And if you think about it on a population level, there must be billions, maybe trillions of times that a mother and a child have had a relationship. If you go back across like the animal kingdom, right? From your lineage back to the very first time. I mean, it's hard to draw a line where there was the first mother to child interaction. Sometimes the mother will have a child like laying an egg, and then the egg is hatched and the child never sees a mother or a father, right? Like, that happens in the animal kingdom. But oftentimes with mammals, there will be an interaction between mother and child. And so what I'm trying to get at here is that since this has happened trillions of times, I mean, it's got to be in the trillions or in the billions at least, right? Since this has happened so many times, there is an evolutionary pressure on this, right? There will be instincts and behaviors that are kind of born into the animals that will make them more or less fit to survive in the world, right? There's going to be instincts that mothers are born with and that child is born with. These instincts will make them more or less likely to survive and pass on their genes. So these instincts are evolutionarily designed, is what I'm saying. That's where they come from. And so they're going to make you better or worse at surviving in the world. And the ones that make you worse make you less likely to reproduce, so they don't get passed on. This should be obvious to anybody that understands evolution, right? Nothing I'm saying here should be surprising. So So the knowledge, right? If we're talking about knowledge, we're going to get a little philosophical here, possibly. If you're talking about knowledge, how does a mother know what to do with a child, right? When a mother has instincts and a mother behaves a certain way with a child, or the child with a mother, how do they know? You know what I mean? Like, where does the knowledge of how to do this come from? Where are the instincts exactly in the body? Where are they? Where do the instincts come from? Is there the mother organ, Is there like a little clump of cells somewhere in the body that contains the information for how to be a mother? The instincts exist. The instincts are real. And the instincts are in all mothers. So there must be something somewhere in the bodies of mothers that represents this knowledge. The knowledge is embodied somewhere. And it's been put there by evolution. The body has evolved to have this knowledge. This is kind of what I got at yesterday's video. Like this distinction between body and mind is actually a false distinction. There is no distinction. Your mind is your body. Your brain is your mind is your body. And so somewhere in your brain, in your nervous system, somewhere in your body, there's going to be a kind of a circuit. I mean, I don't know where it is, but somewhere in your brain, most likely, there's going to be kind of like the mother circuit, right? There's going to be the thing that turns on when mothers go into mother mode, and that knowledge, that instinct is embodied. It's part of your body. Nobody taught it to you. You didn't get it after you were born. It might have developed after you were born, but the genetics that were there to develop that were put there by evolution. Evolution has given you embodied knowledge. So this is important, this concept of embodied knowledge. We have a lot of knowledge that we're just born with. We're not blank slates. We're born with certain kinds of knowledge. And it's weird because it's like, we have this problem because we're rational beings. And a lot of our knowledge is not embodied. A lot of our knowledge is learned throughout the world. But then distinguishing between what is learned and what is embodied is really weird. It's strange. And I think it's not something that people are used to thinking about, because there seems to be, it almost seems natural to assume that you're a blank slate. I think that for a long time in human history, before Darwin came along, you can look at what philosophers were talking about. They talked about blank slateism quite a bit, this tabula rasa. Plato had this, I think it was Plato or one of those Greek guys had this idea that all of the knowledge was already out there and you just kind of remembered it. Like the knowledge already existed and it was just the remembering that happens. Like a baby is born with all knowledge and you just remember it, which is kind of a strangely true thing, because you are born with knowledge and you do just kind of remember it throughout your life. Like a mother is born with the knowledge of how to be a mother, right? I mean, a woman is born with the knowledge embodied into her, and at some point she remembers it in a way, right? Because evolution has placed it there. It's embodied. So it's kind of true, right? It's not like there's a realm outside of the baby that the baby's remembering. There's a realm inside of the baby that the baby remembers as it grows up, right? That the baby kind of unlocks knowledge because it's embodied. It's put there by evolution. So that's mother and child. And the reason that evolution has placed these circuits there is because it happens so many times. If something happens 1 trillion times, there will be the behavior around it. There will be an evolutionary pressure, affecting the behaviors around it with things that happened 1 trillion times, right? There are things that we have not adapted to because we haven't had as many interactions with it, like a smartphone, for example. We haven't evolved for it. But if we ran the human experiment for 5 million years going forward and we all had smartphones, we're going to start to adapt to smartphones. Our knowledge of smartphones, the way we use them, will make us more or less likely to survive and pass on our offspring, I would think. They seem to be having a pretty big effect on us today. And so we're going to have embodied knowledge. We're going to adapt instincts to it. If you gave us this is it's a stupid example. But if you gave us 5 million years of living with smartphones, Eventually, who knows, maybe our hands would turn into rectangles, but um, your thumbs would get really good at pressing buttons on the screen. So, and that's only if it affects your reproductive success, and it's really hard to tell what does and what doesn't. But for sure, the way that a mother interacts with a child will affect the reproductive success of that child. So given that, if you think about it, a baby is born and it sort of has like a mother instinct there already, right? The baby is born with knowledge of mother in a way already. So here's another question. What else happens trillions of times throughout human history and throughout animal history, throughout the history going backwards? Sexual reproduction. This has happened longer than the mother and child thing, I'm pretty sure. Because mothers having a close relationship with children, that's going to vary species by species, and it's going to, I should have looked up when it starts, but the sexual reproduction is older, because if you think about it, lizards and sexual reproduction has been going on for 500 million years. And so here's another question, is if this has happened, how many times has a male and a female sexually reproduced in animal history? How many times? Trillions of times. Right? It's got to be above that number, probably. So the way that a male and a female interact clearly is going to have an effect on the reproductive success, on the evolution. There's going to be a lot of evolutionary pressure around the sexual behavior of animals. A lot of it. Like, I almost can't even think of something that will have, beyond just, well, okay, I don't want to get into that question, but it's inarguably true that sexual behavior, sexual instincts are influenced by evolutionary pressure. And so in the same way that baby has a concept of mother when it's born, males have a concept of females that are embodied into them. They have knowledge of female that is embodied, right? There's instincts that males feel towards females that's embodied. And the same thing goes from males towards males. There's an instinct that males feel towards males that is embodied. It's not taught to you, you're born with it. Because for, 500 million years, the males have been interacting with the females, and the way they interact with the females determines their evolutionary success. It determines your fitness, how many children you're going to have. So, and where it gets really freaky, when you really want to get into it, is sexual selection. That's where things start to get wild, because if you think about it, females are choosy, right? Males are not as choosy as females. Males will have sex with more women than women will have sex with men, right? And it's because of pregnancy, largely, I would think, but there's, probably different reasons for it, but females are choosy. They won't have sex with just any male. They will try and pick one, right? And so what does this mean if you think about it? Because the sexual selection is older than human beings, much older. And so if you think about it, males, from an evolutionary perspective, have been trying to win the affections of females for like 500 million years, right? And so the ones that are more evolutionary successful are the ones that are going to be able to attract female attention better, and the ones that will have more sex. Like, it's just how this works. So if you think about it, there's going to be instincts that are built into you that make you better at at winning the affection of females. That will be embodied into you because, well, I don't know how you could disagree with that. It's going to be behavior, instincts. There's going to be knowledge inside of your body when you're born that you kind of remember as you get older, right? That will guide your behavior in interactions with the opposite sex or the same sex. And so what I'm trying to say here is that your knowledge, like a man's knowledge of woman and a woman's knowledge of man, is not something you learn mostly. It's something you're born with. And you kind of, the instincts guide your behavior. And the problem is that we're smart and that we have this ability to look at our own minds, right? And we have this ability to come up with stories for why we're behaving certain ways. Like if you talk to men, you talk to women, they're going to tell you all sorts of things about what they find attractive, why they're going after one girl or another. You know, they're going to tell you reasons, but the true reason is something that they can't even articulate because it's just inside of them in a way that they don't even understand. Like, so there's this thing, if you go onto internet pages where bisexuals hang out, where people, you know, reddit.com/r/bisexual, right? Read what they write. Read what they talk about. There's one particular thing they talk about that I believe is a lie. I should have started the video with this. I meant to start it with this. I was going to title this video The Bisexual Lie. Maybe I don't know what should... you know, the titles are so hard. Okay, so there's this thing that somebody who is bisexual will say. That they feel the same towards men, that they feel the same feelings towards men that they feel towards women. And I believe that's impossible. I believe that that is a lie. Your feeling towards men and towards women is largely built into you. Largely. There's a lot, you know, again, we're like these rational beings and we trick ourselves constantly. And we constantly forget that we're animals. You know, we convince ourselves that we are somehow these beings with free will walking around and making rational decisions. And when you're turned on by somebody, you're like thinking the reasons in your head possibly, but really the reasons are things that are so deep inside of you that you can't even tell whether it's you or not, right? Like it's unexplainable, it's inarticulable, I think. And so it's impossible for you to feel, it's impossible for a male to feel the same thing towards males as you feel towards females, because your feeling towards males and females is so deep inside of you. It's built in, it's embodied into you so deeply that it doesn't even make sense to describe it, like to describe it this way, in my opinion, right? And you know, it depends on what you mean by feel, depends on what you mean by attraction. You know, to some extent, your attraction is to things that are kind of universal human concepts that males and females have, but mostly your attraction is going to be based on this embodiment of instincts that you have, like these embodied instincts that you're born with. And, you know, it affects the way you think. And if you observe your own mind closely, you're going to realize that you have knowledge of male and female that you didn't learn. You have knowledge of male and female that was there when you were born. And so here's where I get transphobic. There's these people that want to say that a male who identifies as a woman is a woman. And that's so contradictory to biology. It's so contradictory that it's like insane. It's just insane. It's an insane idea. Because, you know, we have 500 million years of evolutionary instincts built on interacting with males and females differently, right? And so when a male goes around and identifies as a female, I mean, how hard is it for a male to pass? If you think about it, if you think about what these trans people talk about all the time, talk about passing. It's so difficult for a male to pass as a female because males have this instant instinct. Like you can tell with like a quarter of a second of a look whether that's a male or female, usually. And then when you get closer up and you start interacting, how much does smell make a difference? This is something that I think people forget to talk about quite a bit. Smell plays a huge part in our interactions with each other, especially sexually. And maybe I'm particularly attuned to this kind of thing, but to me, I can fall in love with a girl over the way she smells or not. Or I think that it like influences the way that, it's weird how much it's like, did I become attracted because of the smell, or does the smell good because I'm attracted? Like, it's hard for me to tell which one came first there, you know? And you can't, what surgery can you get that you can change the smell, right? Like, so what I'm trying to say is that this is so deep that you cannot switch from male to female. It just doesn't happen. It can't happen. And part of that is the perception systems. You can't trick the perception system of the other humans. They're always going to perceive you as male. There's nothing you can do about it. And I know, you can get these surgeries and hormones very early on, and maybe in that case you can trick, you can deceive the perception, but that's not something I want to get caught on. And so I think that this also affects the feminists, because feminists want men to treat women equally to men, but I'm saying that that's like literally impossible. It's impossible. You will always perceive males differently than you perceive females, and your instincts will force you to treat males and females differently. It's instinctual. There's nothing I can do about it. When I see an attractive female, the behaviors that kick in are so deep inside of me that it's like, sure, I can tell you that I'm professional. I can tell you that I'm, I can use the rational part of me to guide my behavior, right? But how much control do I actually have over that? Really? If I'm being truly honest with myself, if I'm being truly mindful and introspective and studying my own mind and my own knowledge structure, when I'm confronted with a beautiful woman, my behavior is going to change. And there's not a goddamn thing I can do about it, And it's... Yeah, I think... Where was I going with all this? We have these evolutionary instincts built so deeply inside of us. So deeply. And we deny them at our peril, really. We deny, like, the conversations we have around it become pathological when we deny it. Pathological, because you're just denying a part of reality that is so deep that it's like, it has to be a part of the conversation. It has to be. If you're having a conversation about feminism, you have to include this. You have to. Males and females are different. We have different instincts. We're going to treat each other differently. It's going to have an effect, no matter what. As long as we're animals, until we transcend our bodies and become cyborg beings or whatever, we're animals. Our entire bodies are animal bodies, the whole thing. So, and most of your knowledge, or a lot of your knowledge, comes from your body that you're born with. Because of evolutionary pressures, because of the repeated interactions over time. The way a male and a female interact has happened a bazillion times. And the way a male and a female interact inarguably affect your evolutionary success, which means evolution has a pressure, which means there are genetic qualities inside of you, genetic things that you're born with, that guide your behavior. You're not as rational as you think you are. You're not as in control of your thoughts as you think you are. Your behavior is not as up to you as you think it is. Really. We trick ourselves constantly into believing that we are the true free will drivers of the bodies we're in, but we're not. We're really not. So, there's that. So, yeah, this idea that these bisexual people that say that they're 50-50, they feel the same towards men and women. Not true. Impossible. Impossible. It's just not possible. You just haven't studied your mind closely enough. You cannot feel the same way. You cannot. You can't. So, they always put numbers on it. If you go through those pages, there's always numbers like, oh, I'm 90-10, I'm 80-20. I'm 99-1, whatever they say, You can't put numbers on that kind of thing. I mean, I get it. I get the idea. Like you're saying, oh, mostly, kind of, but really what you're looking at is if you're inside your mind, there's two structures, right? Your body is built with two structures, and one of them guides your behavior towards males and one towards females. I mean, males also have been interacting with males for longer than they've been interacting with females, if you think about it. Like, organisms have been interacting with organisms since the beginning of organisms. So we have instincts that are so deep inside of us. Like, if you think about how you look at a human face, the average human is a genius at interpreting emotions inside of a human face. A genius. You can detect the slightest variations in real time as you look at a human face. And it's built into you. There's these studies where they take people who are blind, where the optic nerve isn't severed, but some part of the optic nerve is damaged or something, where like they are blind legally, but you can show them a picture of a face that's angry, and their body responds to it, right? So they have no idea rationally what they're looking at. Like if you ask them what they're looking at, they're going to say blackness or whatever, like whatever a blind person sees. And then they still react to it on an embodied level. So it's like, if you're aware of that, once you understand these kinds of ideas, you have to change the way you think about your own mind. And when you think about your own mind, like you interact with males and females of your own species differently, and there's not anything you can do about it. So that's the kind of the point I'm getting to. This is why it's transphobic. This is what I'm saying. Like, a male just won't become a female. It's just not possible without Star Trek level technology. And we can lie. Sure, we can lie and say that's a woman, but my body is not going to lie about it. My body's not going to lie to me, So who's telling the truth, me or my body? And what's the difference? You know what I mean? This is why it's pathological to force this truth, right? To say trans women are women, it's a pathology. It's truly it's a lie on it's like a very deep lie too, You're lying to your body, which is going to cause problems for you, I think. So, and yeah, maybe that's all I wanted to say. Give me 1 second. I gotta think about this one. There's just these things, there's these ideas that we have that are our instincts, right? And we keep denying it. And I think it's because, Darwin only wrote the book 150 years ago, right? Maybe everybody hasn't read it yet in a metaphorical way. Not everybody has understood. Seriously, look up a picture of a chimp hand. Look at it compared to your own hand. It should freak you out, I think. When you really stare at it, especially the fingernails, look at the fingernails. It's weird. It's weird. And then, watch videos of chimpanzees doing things. Watch them hanging out with each other. Any monkey, really. Just watch the way they behave around each other when they hang out. Watch the way they eat. That freaks me out too. If you look at a chimpanzee eating fruit, watch how they do it carefully. And you'll notice that it's strangely similar to the way you do things. There's things that are different completely, but there's things that are weirdly similar. And then if you start to think about it, the way that we behave in general is weirdly similar to animals. And you really have to have the ability to pull the narrative out of it. You really have to be able to pull your own, to stop tricking yourself into believing you're behaving certain ways because of certain things. So, here's another interesting concept that, this is why I think some of the feminists haven't figured this out yet. And I think the TERFs are on the right track because they're the ones that are at least putting their foot down on biology and saying, nah, some biology's going on here. But if you think about men and women and what they find attractive in each other, it's clearly different. Sexual selection has been happening over, some unknown amount of time, but what women find attractive in men is different than what men find attractive in women. And for women, it is tied to social status. It is. Women will recognize the status of a man. And so here's a weird question. Does the man have higher social status because he's attractive? Or is the man attractive because he has higher social status? Did I say that right? Is the man attractive because of his status, or does he have the status because he's attractive? So if you think about how men acquire status, how much does their attraction play a part in that? And how much is that attractiveness actually just judged by other males rather than females? So do males promote men to higher levels on the status, to higher status levels because they're attractive? I think they do. I think men recognize attractiveness in other men, and it changes the way they behave towards that man, and they can't do anything about it, right? It's built into you, it's embodied. And so I think more attractive men, and again, you get into this word attractive, and nobody knows what that means. Every time you talk about this word attractive, it blows up. The whole conversation blows up. Because nobody knows what attractive means, I think, or nobody agrees on what it means. You can't write it down. And part of this is because attraction and attractiveness is so deeply built into your body that it's inarticulable. There's no plan. You can't write it down into words. You can't describe it. Whatever you describe is going to be wrong. It'll be imprecise, at least. You can get close, but there's always going to be things that are attractive that are outside what you described, and things that are not attractive that are inside what you described. Your definition can't be perfect. So, yeah, it's such a weird concept to think about, because it's like women find high status men attractive. And they will lie to you and say that doesn't affect it. Like some girl will be like, no, money doesn't matter or status doesn't matter. I don't care where a guy is in status. That's a lie. You're lying to yourself. You're straight up lying. You know, I can't tell you what's more disappointing for a woman to hear than me saying, I don't have a job. It's not an attractive thing to say. And, you know, it's not just job. It's not just money. It's not like money is, we don't have instincts towards money. You know, your evolutionary instincts probably, it's not like you see a gold necklace on a guy and you're like, ooh, like it gets you. But there's definitely a connection between status, and status is largely how men treat other men. So if there's a guy in a room that all the other men are kind of worshiping, you know what I mean? If there's a guy in the room who the other men have great respect for, that will be a more attractive man. And again, is he attractive because they have the respect, or do they have the respect because he's attractive? And what is attraction? Is it just physical, or is it something else? I think the answer is that it's something else. It's not just physical. Everybody knows that. The physical plays a part, but then you get into these questions of like, what exactly is attractive? And it's such a complicated question. And I don't think people take it seriously enough. And you get these people with all these different sexualities talking about bisexual and whatever. And, you know, it just doesn't make sense, the words that they're using. Oh, I'm 50% attracted to one, 50% attracted to the other. It doesn't make sense. You're lying, or you're just not understanding it well enough. Or the words that you're using are just so imprecise that it doesn't really matter that you're using those words. So, you know, that's my stance on this kind of stuff. It all drives me crazy because I feel like I'm just looking around at a world of people who don't know what's going on. And it largely seems to stem from not having understood truly the consequences of evolution and the way that it affects your psychology. You know, the way that it affects your mind. We're not blank slates. We aren't. Okay, that was I gotta make 2 more videos now. I have to make one about porn, for sure. Because there's something that the radical feminists... I've been watching a lot of radical feminist content recently. From Vanessa Voki, and also, I don't know if you'd call her a radical feminist. Ariel? I don't know what her last name is. I hope I pronounced her name right. I've been watching a bunch of her videos. She's a outspoken lesbian YouTuber. Making videos for a long time, and I've kind of seen her around, but I've never really watched her videos till recently. And I think that there's this world of ideas that some of these feminists are actually completely correct on, in my opinion. And then there's like an entire world of ideas where they're completely wrong. And I believe there's kind of a split that I see, and I would like to try and talk about that a little bit more. And part of it has to do with porn. A lot of the radical feminists really, really, you know, they hate porn. They do. And they fight against it, and they fight against the porn industry. But I think that it's a more complicated issue than simply saying porn is bad. I'm not going to say porn is good. That's not what I'm saying, but I think it's more complicated. I need to make a video about that. I might make that later today. Whew. Okay, I'm going too fast here. I got to slow down. Okay, let me make sure there's nothing else I want to say. I also need to make a video about homosexuality and what is it. And again, I think a lot of the language and the understanding around it is just not there. It's not up to the task of pulling in the fact that truly we, our knowledge of male and female and our knowledge of sexuality is largely just born into us. And it's so deep that I think it's like a fish inside of water, that we don't see it because it's actually so deeply a part of us that we just don't understand it. And it's really, really hard to just digest these ideas. It's really hard. I mean, I'm not, like I said, I'm not an expert on this stuff. I barely, there's people that know more than me about this. And this is me making these videos, pushing myself to the limits of my own knowledge. And again, if you find places where I'm wrong or said something wrong, please tell me. If you can, if you want to. I'm no genius. I'm not. And, I haven't read enough about this. A lot of people deny that evolutionary psychology is even a thing. But how can you possibly deny that and not be a blank slateist? You know what I mean? Like, how can you believe that humans are a blank slate? It's just not true. We're like the opposite of a blank slate. We're barely not blank slates, in my opinion. Like, our ability to create technology and speak and make culture and tradition is so deeply tied into our biology that it's like inseparable. There's no evolutionary psychology, evolutionary pressures created our culture, right? Like, how much of culture is biological, which is a huge question. It's like, isn't culture as biological as anything else? It was made by biological entities. We are biological creatures created by an evolutionary process, and we created culture. So, again, I say I'm making the feminists upset, but it's like, how much of patriarchy is actually just biologically determined? What if our society is set up this way? What if the way, look around at society, do the thing where you look back at history and then you say it's a patriarchal, hellscape or whatever people want to say about it, like some sort of dominance by men. But how much of that is just the way that the Homo sapiens animal just structures their own populations? Like, even irrationally. Just how much of that is just what we do, just naturally, right? And then if we try to change it, how pathological will that change become? Are we forcing something that's actually a lie? Are we forcing something that it's, I'm not saying it can't change. This is the question. It's like, how much is biologically determined and how much can it change? That's the question. You need to start there. You have to. If you don't start with an evolutionary question or a biological question, then I think you're starting in the wrong place. Okay, so that's about enough for this one. See you later.